yeah, that was one of those moments where I was like, what am I up to? I'm hundreds of miles from the nearest actual landmass, and I'm just looking at a volcano birthing a new island.
That is the
buzzy.
most incredible thing I've ever heard.
It was
to see an island
be born.
Hey, it's Sarah, and this is Travel Like You. We're back with another special episode recorded direct from the island of Kos in Greece. I spent my last night as a volunteer there chatting with Kate, my new favorite New Zealander, about our experience, and you'll see why it was so hard to say goodbye, about the realities of what it means to safely travel Europe, and so much more. Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
You're so welcome. I yap till my heart's content.
Can you introduce yourself to anyone who doesn't know you?
Of course. I'm Kate. I'm from New Zealand. My accent is slightly off-putting, and not because it's from New Zealand, but because I grew up in the UK until I was 10, and I grew up in the southern sort of area of the UK, and then I mixed it with a really rural bogan New Zealand accent, so the outcome is sort of like a Aussie man who works in the mines in Perth, which is really sexy and cool. But I'm 25. I quit my job as an interior designer 4 months ago when I got the opportunity to go sail across the Pacific, and I did that. And that was 4 months ago, nearly 4 months ago that I left New Zealand, and I've been hip-hopping around, and now I'm here, and I've been at sales with Sarah for two and a half weeks. I think I've been here.
Yeah, because I've been here, I'll have been here a month.
Yeah.
And you got here halfway through pretty much.
Yeah, because I came like the day after your injury. I remember, that's how I met you, with all your bandages on.
Oh my gosh, yes, because you gave me first aid.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I whipped out the age-old first aid certificate that is deeply invalid now. But
So, I haven't actually mentioned it yet, but this glamping site that we're on is called Sails on Kos. And the lovely Kate arrived right after I had an incident. So this is the story that probably many people have been wondering about, because if you follow the Instagram page, you might have
why
seen...
is she covered in bandages?
So long story short, a couple weeks ago, the day before
2.5 weeks ago,
the day before Kate arrived, I was sleeping, and I suddenly, in the middle of the night, got up and ran out of my tent, completely ate shit in the dirt, and woke up outside bloodied and confused. So
best morning ever.
yeah, so this was probably at like 2:00 in the morning. Another volunteer had just arrived, Hope, and she was awake, and so she was witness to this, and she says that at some point, I had established long before that I'm a sleep talker. This, though, has never happened in my life. And Hope says that in the night, I sat up and I said, "What was that? What was that? What was that?" And then she said it was a cow.
My god, I hate cows.
And I didn't believe her, and I sprinted out of the tent, tripped over like the spike in the ground, and ate it. And so she says a cow had just mooed very loudly right before I popped up. And so
do you have like a deep-seated fear of cows?
I must, because I don't think I can ever look at them the same way from here on out.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I can laugh about it now, but
because you're all healed now, so
yes.
It's like
but it was quite the scary experience, if I'm being honest. I had like 2 really beat up knees. My hand took the longest to heal. It was, so like these were surface scratches, for the record.
Yeah, well, it's when you like take a couple of layers of skin off, and it's not like when you get a slice and it stitches itself back together, like your skin joins back together. It's like it actually has to regrow all of that skin, which yeah, it looks pretty manky for a minute.
Oh my god, the photos I took were disgusting. But it's healed really well. And everyone was really understanding. For about like 4 or 5 days I was kind of limping around, and I had limited use of my right hand. But now I can laugh about it.
It honestly, they look so fine. Like, they don't even look like they're gonna like scar super bad or anything either. Like,
I'm really happy with the way that they healed. But yeah, in the moment I was laughing and crying because I was thinking of all the ways that everyone was going to make fun of me.
yeah. Well, I automatically assumed when I got here that you had like borrowed one of the bikes that we have here. Like, we have bikes that we're allowed to borrow for free here, but they are maybe the worst bicycles you've ever seen in your life. And I just automatically assumed that you had just gone like ass over tits off the bike. And then you said you had a nightmare and ran out of the tent, and I was like, oh, that's so much weirder. That's, oh, like, yeah, no, same. Like,
Yeah, no one could understand from experience. Although Louisa gave me a hug. This was the sweetest I've ever seen her be.
I've never seen her give anybody a hug.
Yeah, she saw in my eyes, I was like, it was scary. And then she gave me a hug the next morning because I had to wake up 3 hours later and go to breakfast.
Yeah.
And so, Kate and I have been on the breakfast shift every morning, but Kate was my nurse for a few days because you have first aid training.
I do, yeah. I mean, it's definitely like completely out of date, and I'm sure they love to change the rules about CPR and stuff, so I'm sure if I gave you CPR now, that's probably wrong, but it's just, I feel like first aid is just like common sense, like just don't, don't spit in it and don't get dirt in it and it'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
But
the best part was throughout that week where it was really bad and I had like bandages on it because I couldn't leave them open while I was working breakfast.
Yeah,
because
no,
they were
you
too
don't
gross.
need to get egg in it or anything.
And the explaining to guests and then all of the unsolicited first aid advice.
Yes.
That was very fun.
Oh my god.
Everyone being like, let it dry out. You should cover it. You should put this cream on it. You should put this on it. I'm like,
Yeah, the array of German creams that you were given. I was like, it's so, trying to Google translate German antibiotic cream labels is, I don't know. I feel, all these mums like meant so well, but...
Yeah, but they were looking at my hands when I was handing them like their plates for breakfast, and they're like, "Oh, what happened?" And I was just telling someone I'm kind of bad at lying when I don't have to, and so I couldn't think of anything good.
Yeah,
and so I was just like, my fear was that people were gonna think I was like wasted and fell, and I don't really like an image of me.
No,
like
that's
that.
not a great look.
Especially, I'm working here. I don't want people to think that. People ask me, were you drunk?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So at least this way, like, I got a little bit of, like, healthy pity.
Yeah. I had a skewy and I fell. I think that's how you should describe it to anybody who asks from now on. I had a skewy.
Yeah, a cow scared me.
Yeah.
Which is, like,
It was a really
most
loud
embarrassing.
cow. It was awful.
It was a full moon.
Yeah.
And so the animals were crazy loud that evening. Everyone confirmed that it was
they
wild.
were popping off the night that I got here as well. So many.
Yeah.
It's the only night that the cows have drowned out the karaoke from the surrounding hotels. The only night, which is honestly kind of better. I think I would prefer the cows.
I don't know if I would.
No, well, evidently not. Yeah, I don't know. I would prefer for you not to be listening to cows while you sleep.
Yeah. That's better for me. I prefer the karaoke. Every night here, how far away do you think it is?
It's so hard to tell because I don't think that we've got like an adults only hotel that's like quite close to us. And then there's that weird one with the castle out the front, but I don't think it's either of those. I think it's somewhere else, but it's just like so flat. And there's nothing here.
Yeah.
Like, there's no buildings to block out the noise. There's no trees or anything. It's just fields that, like, it's probably like ages away. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe it is the adults only hotel, but like...
It could be.
But then I can't imagine, like, let's go to an adults only hotel, like, no noisy kids, and then you're listening to, like, the worst renditions of, like, Bruce Springsteen.
Every wedding song you could possibly imagine, like, Journey and Diana Ross and like...
And it's just getting shitter. Like, it's not getting better. Like, all the singers are getting progressively worse. Like, that's the upsetting bit, is I swear when I first came, like, I was like, it's karaoke. Like, it's not amazing, but it's fine. Mm-hmm. And now like, it sounds like somebody's rolling over a dead animal. It's like, it's awful. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Actually, when I first got here, there was one woman that was consistently singing who was very good.
She's killing it.
And then since then, you can tell it. At first, I wasn't sure if it was karaoke or if
Yeah.
it was a night singer that they
Yeah,
had,
just like
you
a
know,
cover band.
like,
Yeah.
That's pleasant. So that gives you an idea of what the day-to-day is like.
Yeah,
At night, we
the
hear,
night track.
Yeah, we hear the karaoke and cows. And we wake up at 6:30 and head to breakfast, and that's been running pretty smoothly.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
fine. I think, especially now that all the kiddies have gone back to school,
Yeah.
like, we've gone from, like, 95 guests to, like, 65,
Yeah.
which
is a
makes a
huge
world of
difference.
difference.
Yeah. And I can say that, like, I really enjoy working breakfast. I'll kind of miss, like, this aspect of, because I've never worked in food service before
Yeah.
this. I will say that I need to work on, like, not getting worked up.
Yeah, that's something that comes with, like, ages, though, you
Yeah.
know? Like, I've been in hospitality since I was 14, so, like,
Yeah.
you just get there. I reckon I was talking to an English family about this, and I was like, you know, I feel like instead of, like, conscription to the military service, there should be an, like, compulsory 1-year hospitality job for every human being on the planet, just to,
Yeah.
like, give you, like, the social skills of a hospitality. I reckon it's so good for everyone. Like, it
I
gives you
agree.
such a, like, I don't know, it's just as, I reckon it's, like, because hospo people are good people.
Yeah.
Always, as well. As, like, I mean, they're always, like, a little bit insane and drink too much, but, like, they're, like, good people. They're
Yeah.
good folks.
I worked as a cashier in a clothing store. And so I got a little taste of it, but as a teenager, I tried to be a server or a
Yeah.
hostess, and I didn't, not only as a teenager, I wanted that to be one of my, like, a hostess job.
Yeah,
is
one of
what you
those
could get.
things, yeah.
And then I tried in university, too, and I didn't have enough experience.
Yeah, it's so one of those things that you pick at, like, well, you don't always pick, but, like, you get that first job, and you're either, like, me, and you're a dishwasher, and that just, from then on, all you do is hospitality, or your first job is working somewhere, like, we have, like, a clothing shop called Glassons in New Zealand and Aussie, which is, like, a girly clothing shop, and they take heaps of people for, like, Christmas casuals and stuff, and so your first job is either you're, like, doing dishes, and then you become a hospo worker, or you're doing the sales, like, Christmas sales rush at a clothes store, and you do retail, and then, like, the paths just,
Don't cross.
they never cross. They
Yeah.
never cross.
Yeah, I did retail and, like, secretary work and things
Yeah.
like that, like, all similar in that regard. So, like, customer service, but
Yeah.
not hospitality, not food service, which
Yeah.
I've now clearly seen is a whole other game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's good. I like it.
I'm really pleased. I think I did a half decent job.
Yeah,
like,
you did a really good job.
picking stuff
Yeah,
up.
I think the most important thing is, like, that you can, like, chat to people. Like, obviously not, like, too much, but, like...
I chatted too much today.
yeah,
I apologize.
pull you away from the Belgium couple. Sarah, we need you.
I tried so hard.
Oh, dude, it's so
they're
hard to
so
escape
sweet.
conversations sometimes.
Yeah.
You're like, I need to leave, but
Yeah.
you're talking to me. But, like, yeah, I reckon as long as you can chat to people and you can hold 3 plates,
Yeah.
like, that's really the, like, the big, yeah, I mean, and then you can just get better and, like, get less stressed and stuff, like, because
Yeah.
everybody gets stressed, like, that's just the night, especially if you've got, like, some crazy ass chef, because I feel like that's the big
Yeah.
get in hospo jobs, is you get some crazy chef who starts throwing spoons at you and stuff, which is,
Luckily, we have Irini,
and she's a sweetheart,
who
she's
is
a sweet baby angel.
God's gift to Sales on Coast.
Yeah,
really, like
she
she
is.
is the sweetest human being, and she gives us a little plate of food that's and like we get to pick at it during breakfast.
It's so cute.
So good. She's a goddess in the kitchen.
She's a sweetheart.
I actually got her a little souvenir.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Cute.
I like
That's so
that.
nice.
Let's get to it.
Yeah.
Kate, you have the opportunity now, before we jump in, to give me your no context story.
One line.
Yeah.
Just one line. I abandoned my shorts and my underwear and my socks in a portaloo at the Guatemalan land border. Just abandoned them.
All right, we'll see if we get the context later then.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so that said, you've done a lot of traveling.
Yeah, I've done a bit. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like I meet people and they've done like, you know,
There's always gonna
crazy.
be
Yeah,
someone
but I
who's
know
done
I have.
more.
I've been very lucky. I think
Yeah.
very lucky to do a fair bit.
Yeah, and especially in the last 4 months, you've done quite a bit.
Yeah, done quite a lot in the last. I'd say since sort of like September last year, has been a lot. But yeah, and especially since I left New Zealand in like early May, yeah, done a bit.
Yeah.
Hopped around a bit.
And you've, how many continents have you been to now?
I have been to. Trying to think which ones I'd be missing. I haven't been to Africa, and I haven't been to Antarctica. So I'm missing. Am I missing? Is that 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm missing 2 out of.
Okay, well,
Are there 7?
yeah.
Oh god. You can tell I didn't take geography past the age of like 15. Yeah. So I've been to 5 now.
Well, okay, like, you can kind of exclude Antarctica because it's very hard to get
Yeah.
there.
That is a long
So-
way from everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but 5 out of 6
Five's not bad. I
is
feel.
really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I'm
amazing.
a lucky girl.
Yeah.
I'm a lucky girl.
And you've been traveling since you were a teenager. You've done some big trips.
Yeah. I mean, I've been. The thing with immigrating to New Zealand meant that we did pretty much compulsory trips back to family in the UK, which meant I got to see like a lot of Asia and stopovers and stuff as a kid. And then my parents let me do my first like, not solo because I was with 3 other girls, but we were 16, 17, and we booked the classic like interrailing tickets where you get like 10 train trips and you don't really know where you're gonna go, and that was sick because they let me take. I took 6 and a bit weeks out of school, which like it was very chill of my parents to decide that was okay, and they copped a lot of shit for it as well.
You took 6 weeks out of school to take, like, not, it wasn't during the summer?
Oh, I had 2 weeks of like my what would you call it in the States, like midterm, like mid.
Like around Christmas time?
No, we get them.
Oh, we have like sometimes we have like spring break.
It was a 2-week break that
Okay.
we got. Like we get them because we have 4 terms, and like
Okay.
in between term 1 and 2, and in between 3 and 4, you get like
Yeah.
random 2 weeks. So I took those 2 weeks, and then I took 2 weeks on either side of 2 weeks on one side of it and 3 weeks on the other, and took a whole whack of time out of school, which turned out to be fine. You
Yeah.
know, I still got my education.
So that's good.
Yeah.
But that 6 weeks was like smack dab in the middle of like
Yeah, just like it was actually in the. I'm trying to think what time of year it was. It was. Yeah, it was just in the middle of the year. It was not. Yeah, it didn't coincide with anything. Like that would be good. It was not coinciding with a good time to be out of school. Anyway, I missed
Yeah.
a lot of internals and that sort of stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. I think my parents were really aware that the kids that I went to primary school and stuff with were getting opportunities to do this kind of thing, and I desperately wanted to go, and I'd saved up the money, and they were like, you know, if we'd stayed in the UK, she would have been able to do this. She saved up the money. She really wants to do it.
Oh, that's great.
Let her go anyway. Yeah, which it was mean. It was such a fun trip.
That's
It was
big.
great. Yeah.
And so what was this Interrail trip? Where did you end up going?
We did. We caught the Eurostar Classic over from London to Paris, and we were in Paris for a little bit, and then we went to. I'm trying to think the order that we went. I think we went from Paris to Berlin, and then we went from Berlin to Salzburg in Austria, and then I'm pretty sure we went to Prague next, and then we went to Munich, and then we went back into France to Lyon, and then back to Paris again, but with some failures of some of those connections were not seamless, so that's the general loop.
Okay.
But it didn't loop quite as nicely. We had a couple of train mistakes and things, but that's chill.
And you've told me before that the way you've traveled then versus now has changed a little bit. Your like mentality, obviously when you're like 16, 17, you're a different person.
Yeah, completely.
And so what was that trip like?
That trip was it's funny because I don't want to say that it was more planned than anything I would do now, but it almost was. Like there was a set itinerary of where we were going to go, and we had all our hostels sort of like booked in advance and everything. And it was, in that way, it was a lot more sensible and like organized, and you know, I had money, like a budget set out, and I knew which, you know, we knew which trains we were going to catch and all of the rest of it. But I think the difference is being 16, 17 in like a foreign continent and foreign countries, and especially growing up somewhere like New Zealand, which is unbelievably safe for the most part. Obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but you know, unbelievably safe, and we don't have big urban centers and that sort of thing, and we don't have a lot of, you know, international like threats and that sort of thing. And this was all in sort of 2016 sort of time, and so the idea of terror attacks was not something that was ever in my scope, because I was 16 and I didn't watch BBC News and I wasn't paying any attention to it. And then all of a sudden that was a massive part of this trip, and it was right after the Munich stabbings. Was it stabbings or a shooting in their shopping mall in Munich? But we were in Munich like 3 days after that happened.
Whoa.
It was the year after that first round of Paris attacks, when somebody drove that truck.
I think it was in Nice.
Yeah, in Nice. Oh, yeah, it was in Nice, the trucks, yeah. And so that was, yeah, I think in terms of, if you looked at it on paper, the way I used to think about planning a trip, and that it looked a lot more sensible. I think if you look at how we carried ourselves and how we adapted to sort of, not to sound too military about it, but like, you know, developing situations.
Yeah.
There was we didn't clock any of it, and really didn't even at the time clock how dangerous some of the decisions we were making were. And like, we were fine. Like, I don't want to act like anything bad happened to us. We were totally fine, but
you're young, and you're 16, 17, you're on vacation.
Yeah, you can buy alcohol when you're 16, 17 in like Germany and Prague and stuff. Like, you know, we were like buying bottles of cider and thinking we were like the coolest thing in the world, and we weren't worried about like, you know, in Berlin we were walking to buy said cider from like the bottle shop in the train station, which is a whole different level of trashy, and we walked through a German First Nations rally, which is like essentially like a German white supremacy rally.
Yeah.
And we just walked through it right as all the police with their like what are their big shields and stuff were turning up, and we just strolled through it because we were just like, oh, like, what are these people? And we can't read things, and there was no swastikas around, but like there was like, we couldn't read the signs and stuff. We had no idea what was going on. And then again, like, somebody in the hostel was like, oh my god, have you seen what's happening out in the streets? Like, it's this and this, and we were like, oh, like, interesting. I just went to get my pear cider. Like, it's so
oh my god,
just not paying attention to, not making any active decisions to just not put yourself in the middle of something that could be potentially quite dangerous.
Yeah, because you're just enjoying the moment, which is good, but you kind of don't have the wherewithal yet that you do when you're an adult, just to know what kinds of bad things happen.
Yeah.
And then you kind of make your decisions based off of what you know could be danger.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what the danger could be, then you're just cruising.
Yeah, and if you're not, like, we don't have, like, I mean, we do now, but we didn't, in New Zealand, we certainly didn't have, like, rallies and stuff like that. We didn't have riots, we didn't have any of that sort of shit. That was not, that didn't happen. I'd never seen anything like that before. Like, I'd heard a bit, like, family had kind of talked about the 2012 London riots and all of that kicking off, but I was not aware that people gathered in crowds and just, like, smash shit and smashed other people. Like, I was not aware that that was a thing and that it happened all the time. Like, it's just, you don't...
Yeah. And so there were a few things you mentioned, sort of going through some of these train stations and stuff that happened. Some of your stops were a little precarious.
Yeah, we had again in Munich, again, really hungover from buying, like, far too much not underage alcohol, but, we were in the Munich train station, and you sort of all, you know, you go through the, what do you call it, like, security, like, Czech and everything.
Yeah.
You like go through it, and then you're just where all the platforms are. And we were trying to figure out which platform we go to, and then there's a speaker, like a loudspeaker announcement that the train station is being evacuated because there's been a bomb threat made, which, following the fact that they'd just had a massive terror attack a few days earlier, was being taken very seriously. And anybody on the street side of the security check just got evacuated back out onto the street, but everybody who was on the now secure side was just put onto whatever trains happened to be there. And so we were supposed to be catching a train from Munich. I think from there we were going back to France, but we ended up going back towards Prague. But again, this took us like several hours to realize we were going in the wrong direction, which is just, yeah, like, because it was before you had like eSIMs and stuff as well, so you weren't like looking on Google Maps like figuring out where you're going. The next time we sort of realized what was going on was when we realized we'd already done this train, like we were going through stations that we'd done
Already seen before. Oh my god.
But
so did you get off the train? When did you get off the train and turn around?
we got off, like, I think we were 2 stops in, and we got off in some random German town in the middle of nowhere and waited for the next train to go back to Munich again, and got enough internet on our, like, I had one of those awful touch phones that had a stylus with it. Got enough internet on the stylus phone to see that Munich train station was open again, and went back to Munich and did the whole thing all over again. And everyone, they were really understanding about it, and like, you know, because
you didn't have to buy tickets.
We didn't have to buy
again,
another ticket, which was like good. But yeah, just like no, like that's really, you know, that's really, again, it's not like anything particularly awful happened by any means, but it's that thing of like, people were doing horrible stuff at that time, and we just really had no. I find it really scary to think about like how little attention I paid, and we all paid to that sort of stuff. And like, we were escorted several times out, like the metro in Paris always has armed guards, right? But there was several occasions where we were escorted out by an armed guard because we looked, as a group of like young, obviously like traveling girls, we looked like a potential unit of victims or whatever. And so they would take, like, they would walk us all the way out of the metro and that sort of stuff, and it's just, we at the time thought it was really ridiculous, but it's like, it's just, yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting to me that all of those experiences were sort of in countries where the perception is you'd be safe.
Yeah. And people think, oh, Europe, you know. Yeah. And there's many reasons why people just automatically think Europe is safer than the rest of the world.
Yeah, which is, it's a shame. It's like, I mean, I was again in France like a couple of years later, and it was when France was having all of, something about oil strikes, and everyone had those high-vis vests on.
Oh my gosh, I should know. People are gonna really give me shit for this. But this was during the Gilets jaunes, and I think, if I'm correct, it was like a lot of different sort of working class groups. So it could have been oil workers and farmers and like different groups. If I'm correct, I hope.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, again, showing my continued ignorance, as I had no idea what was going on at the time, but it'd been in Paris, and the you know, what's the main street? The
Champs-Élysées.
Yeah, that was all, you know, like, fucked up, and the cars are burnt out and the ATMs are ripped out of the wall and all that sort of stuff. And then we were in Lyon and just walking through Lyon and was not paying attention. I was 19 at this point, 19, 20, not paying attention to the news, and all of a sudden just start getting surrounded by people in high-vis vests. And I think, France, people love to bike. People on bikes wear high-vis vests. I was like, this is some kind of Tour de France moment, but it's just a whole lot of like casually dressed people with high-vis on, and it was not the Tour de France, obviously. It was like a full rally going, and again, people, like, you know, police suddenly, it's crazy how quickly it happens. Like, 1 minute it's me and my one mate that I was with, like, looking for somewhere to buy a pretzel or something stupid, and then there's a couple of people around us in high-vis, and then there's maybe 40 or 50, and then there's literally fucking hundreds of people within like the space of a few minutes.
Oh my god.
And then there's police there, and then there's tear gas, and then it's like all popping off. And again, it's just like, we just, you know, if being a little bit older now, like, I know enough to be aware of what is happening in that country, and not that that makes that country not safe, but if I'd been slightly more switched on, if any of us had been slightly more switched on, we probably would have been keeping tabs on where these rallies were happening and what they looked like and what they were about, and you know, like, because they're not just like, they're not flash mobs, they don't just appear out of anywhere, like
having lived in France now for a few years, we can sort of tell when these things are coming, and a lot of them are sort of pre-planned. Recently, last year, my friend was visiting, and it was during the protests for the retirement switch, change to the retirement law in France. And it was nuts because there were tons of protests all the time, and most of them were pretty tame. But there was the pretty often sort of more violent protest. And we're not talking like in Bordeaux, we're not talking like breaking car windows and stuff, but lighting a trash can on fire, yes. And lots of graffiti and stuff like that, breaking glass, maybe. But a friend of mine was visiting last year in April, and this was, I believe, the same night that President Macron had like made the decision. He like overrode the decision of the rest of like the government body and was like, no, we're doing this. And from the fourth story of my building, we watched as they set like a pile of trash cans on fire next to a bunch of cars and stuff, and they're like running through the streets yelling and throwing stuff, and we're watching from the top, and I have to admit, we were like, this is so cool. Like we were loving it. It was like, because we were safely far away. And what do you know, around the corner from my apartment, they had set the door of the mayor's office on fire. Nice. And it's this, I said the same thing. People are gonna give me shit for that too, but I was like, oh, badass. Because at the end of the day, like, it's a part of history. This is a huge moment in France's history that a lot of people were very upset about, and they made a big statement. And so they lit the mayor's office door on fire, and it's a really old door. I mean, it's probably at least a few hundred years old. And so people were upset because they're like, oh, they could have, you know, done something else, like, don't sacrifice this piece of history. And I'm like, sure, but this burned door is now also part of history. But all that said, like, I've been in the middle of it, kind of, just from a safe point of view.
And that's like, it's like, I totally don't, like, there's no part of me that disagrees with, like, protesting in that sense and stuff. Like, I hate violence, and I think the outcomes of some of them are really horrendous, but you know, like, when I was in Guatemala last year was right after Guatemala had their democratic election, and the previous leader had been voted out but decided that they actually just didn't really want to leave. And so there was all of those there was huge protests, and they were blocking down all the land borders, and they were stopping flights coming in. There was no gasoline coming into the country, and but because this was last year, I was 24, I was older, I was not feeling as stupid. We knew what was going on, and we knew that the majority of those protests and where it was all really kicking off was at certain borders, and also in Guatemala City, and took the appropriate action of, look, I still really want to go to Guatemala, and I know enough about how to get through the borders that I can still go and be safe, but I also know that right now I should not be in Guatemala City because there is a huge political uprising happening, and no part of me disagreed with what the people were doing. It was a lot of indigenous peoples talking about their right to a voice, and that's really important, but it made Guatemala City really dangerous for a while, and there was no fuel to go in the ambulances, and lots of people were not getting the healthcare that they needed, and it was a huge deal in Guatemala, and it didn't make me feel any less safe in the country because I was tapped in enough to just be like, okay, this thing is happening, this is how I'm going to adjust to not put myself unnecessarily in harm's way. And we were completely fine, and everywhere that we were in Guatemala, you wouldn't have known there was anything going on at all.
But it's a great lesson in thinking ahead to what the political situation of the country you're visiting is.
And especially now where it's like, you know, even in New Zealand, like we never used to have shit like that. Like it didn't happen. And now, again, not remotely to the same scale as the US or places in Europe, but like that is a thing now. People protest and people rally and that sort of, and it just like, yeah, there's a level of like, oh, you know, not my country, not my problem. If you're going to be traveling there, you really need to like,
be aware.
It just takes you being in like, it's that thing of like, you're always safe until the second that you're not. And that, I think, is my biggest thing, is I never want to be off-put by a country because of, you know, people thinking it's dangerous and that sort of stuff. But there are lots of steps that you can take, and just really simple ones like watching or just reading the news, like just not being 16 and off your tits on berry cider every night and thinking it's a really good idea to just like roll around completely blind, like
and I think unfortunately people might be less inclined to check the news to the country in the country they're visiting if it's a European country or a country that is sort of put up on a pedestal as safer than the rest of the world. But even still, if you are aware of the political uprising happening or this tension, and you choose to go, and you make the right decisions to avoid it, that makes perfect sense. The problem is also if tourists or anyone visiting choose to view the political tension as a spectator sport, that's a problem.
That's not okay either.
Like it's I would have never approached, you know, a protest if I weren't aware of what it was.
It's definitely not something to just be like, oh my god, I'm just gonna sit on the side, like you get some popcorn, sit on the sidelines. Like it's definitely not that kind of, it's not a pride parade. Like it's quite bad. And I mean, I found that like me and my sister spent like 6 weeks, nearly 2 months in Central America last year. Awesome. It was incredible. We loved like every second of it. Like it should have been longer, should have been incredible. Was incredible, not should have been incredible, but wish we could have stayed longer. And we just, you know, Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, people were amazing, kind, lovely, really happy to help us out. Me and my sister have the combined directional sense of like a lemming. Like we just and we got lost all the time, and people were so, and our Spanish is shit, and like, but people were so happy to help us out. Like everyone was really lovely, and we got all of these questions from people about like why we were going there and was it safe, and like what were we doing going to Guatemala, like what were we doing going to Belize, what were we doing going to Mexico. And I felt more safe that entire time than I would walking down like the CBD street in Auckland, where I'm from. Like, you know, like in the last like year or two, we've had like 5 or 6 people have been stabbed or shot and down, like, and I didn't feel unsafe at any point. And then interestingly, when I got back, people kept saying like, what was the scariest thing that happened to you? Like, what was the scariest part of being away? And I said to them all completely honestly, when we left Costa Rica, we had a stopover for 3 days in San Francisco, and the scariest part of my entire trip was being in San Francisco. And like that whole, we had a hostel right on the edge of the Tenderloin, which is the area of San Francisco that has a really high condensate of fentanyl addicts and homelessness. And I just had an amazing like 7 weeks of like beautiful people and incredible poverty, but also incredibly happy people, and it's a vibrancy in the poverty. And then suddenly I get to the States, which is like a developed country, it's a first world country. And all of a sudden I walk out of my hotel and within like, hostel, and within like 3 seconds I've been flashed by a man who quite clearly is off his tits on something. And then we walk slightly further up the street and there's, you know, just like the epidemic there. And that was fucking terrifying. And that like kind of thing of people like, oh, well, you know, like what was the scariest part? And it's like the scariest part was on paper the nicest place that we went to. And I think that's really, I think it's really a shame that so many people try so hard to like talk you out of doing stuff like that. And people tried to talk me and Lucy out of going to Central America. People tried to talk me out of taking the sailing, like taking the yachting job across the Pacific because it was too dangerous. People tried to talk me out of going to Turkey by myself because it was too dangerous and I was going to be approached by men and it was going to be a risk, and, you know, what if I was harassed and all that kind of stuff. And what are you doing going to some random Greek island to work on some random campsite? And it's like, actually, if you got here, it's got a fucking like flat edge infinity pool. Like, it's not sketchy. Like, none of this is sketchy. Like, it's all
so ironic, and it's super unfortunate that this is what, you know, the picture of certain places are. And it's funny because sort of the premise of this podcast is to show how other people travel and then to be inspired by it.
Yeah.
And so one side of this lesson is like, don't listen to what other people's opinions are. Like, sort of find out for yourself. And that's exactly the point in the other direction. It's like, yeah, we can talk about these great places we've been, and we can talk about like sort of the weird bad situations we've had and that maybe have turned out okay, but you're never gonna know truly. If you're interested in going somewhere, like, try it. If you can, if you have the privilege, if you have the means, if you have, you know, the opportunity, like, it's really something that you should see for yourself and do your due diligence to see for yourself.
And like, I think, like, how cool is it that we all, you know, because like, obviously we're not people of massive means, otherwise we wouldn't be living in slums on coast. But how cool is it that we're all still doing it? And I actually think, like, the friends we make through doing this kind of work, and like the fact that we get to spend 6 weeks just like sunbathing every day and hanging out with the dog and going on random day trips to other Greek islands and things, like, yeah, I don't see a downside in that, like, at all, you know. I think it's not like it's definitely not like it's not very demure, it's not very mindful, but it is, like, I think it's dope. I think it's like the coolest way to do stuff. I think, if you can.
It's really taught me to slow down and go, like, I don't need my next trip to be this bucket list destination. Like, otherwise I would have never heard of, I didn't know Kos existed.
No, neither. Like, literally not a clue.
I saw it on World Packers.
And then I saw it on the map and I thought, oh, they must be confused. That must be a Turkish island.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, before I saw it on like the travel volunteering website, I never ever would have
come here.
Pinned it as a place to go. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
It's super beautiful, and you know, you can see the whole island in not a long time at all. And then you've got the other islands nearby. I didn't know I was gonna get to just pop over to Turkey one day. Like, I got
just
to
a day trip to another country.
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah. From a ferry, you know, like
I like a 20-minute ferry as well. Like, not exactly a massive excursion.
No, but you know, you get so much, and it didn't really take a lot. You know, like, it didn't. No. We're saving money being here. What with the fact that we're fed and you know, it's a tent, but it's home.
Somewhere to stay,
and it's I can't even begin to properly appreciate like this opportunity, just because I'm just blown away by how well it worked out, despite my injury.
Yeah, despite that.
The only scar I'm leaving with is this one.
There's a small one on the back of the hand.
Yeah, not so bad. But yeah, and so this is such a good way to travel. It's such a good way to see a place you normally wouldn't have. And you know, I was told, I was in Athens a few weeks ago, and I was in the elevator with someone, and I told the guy I'm going to Kos next, and he said, "Oh, it's so touristy there. You should go here instead."
I was in Bodrum, and somebody had been to Kos on a day trip, right? Like, because you could do that from Bodrum. And they were like, I was like, oh, what did you do today? This isn't my weird fucking hostel that I was staying at. And they were like, oh, we went to Bodrum, to Kos. And I was like, oh, how's that? Like, I'm going to be working there. Like, oh, it's not very nice. I was like, brother, like, what? Why would you tell me that? Like, what? I'm just about to go there for like 6 weeks. Like, A, they're wrong, and B, like, why would you say that? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this just goes back to, like, you know, take everyone's opinion with a grain of salt, and find out for yourself if you can. Yeah,
just make your own call, and like, if it's really bad, you can leave.
Yeah. Like,
as long as you've got that, like, backup, little tiny, like, you know, enough money to always, like, get yourself out of something that's, like, really bad. Like, I think that's the thing. It's like, give everything a go as long as you've got, like, I don't know, maybe like
enough to
just
plane
under
ticket
a
out.
grand or something to get yourself out if you need to get out. Then
Yeah.
like, there's nothing that's like, you know, with limits. Like, let's not go to like Ukraine or like, you know, places that are actively at war.
Probably
That's
not
not
the best
cool.
idea
I've met
right
a couple of people who were like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna like go through Ukraine, like, you know, or something like that. And I'm like, I don't know about that one. But yeah, apart from the obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, apart from the
Yeah.
obvious, that's exactly no way to say it better. Like, have a backup plan, but try things out for yourself.
Yeah, and that was my big thing when I got offered, when I left, when I quit my job and sold all my shit and got rid of my house and said goodbye to everybody, was like, I just wanted to say yes to stuff instead of like, and just like try it. And, you know, I'm sure it is not always going to work out. I'm sure there are going to be times where I'm like, what on earth am I doing here? But thus far, I've said yes to all of the opportunities that have come my way, and they've been super weird, and like it's been very much not a Euro summer girly tour, but it's been really fun, and I'm really glad that I did it. And I'm so glad I said yes, because I'd just be like really kicking myself otherwise. And I think that's something else that like comes with age as well, is like I wouldn't have been willing, as much as I was unwittingly taking stupid risks as a kid, like I'm taking a different kind of risk now, and it's a risk that I'm making a conscious decision to do. And I'm really glad that those two kinds of risk taking have like swapped over. Like there's a much more conscious thinking and like active decision making in, I'm gonna try this, but I'm switched on and I know what's happening, rather than, oh no, I'm not going to try that, but I'm completely oblivious to everything that's happening around around me anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of the last 4 months, is there anything that sticks out to you as like one of those moments where you're like, you said yes and you're so glad you said yes?
Yeah, I think like doing this yacht delivery, so like sailing, we ended up sailing 3,500 nautical miles, which is like bigger, like it's the stretch of the Atlantic Ocean but through the Pacific. And there was so many moments where I was like, what the like, this is insane. Like, there were bad moments, but there was moments, I think, there was one night when we first started and it's pitch black. Like, obviously it's pitch black out on the ocean, but there's massive thunderstorm and it's sheeting rain, and then it's like God just puts on a strobe light and I'm alone on my night watch, and it's like, it's insane. It's like the lightning is lighting up the whole ocean, just flashes of seconds. You can see the whole ocean and all the water light up, and there's lightning like going across the sky, and just being like, this is insane. And I saw an island be born. Home Reef, just outside Tonga. We just left Tonga and we were sailing, and I saw a light in the distance and looked on the charts, and there was no fishing boats or anything. I was like, weird. Got a little bit closer, could see that the light was kind of orange and that it was sort of going up and down, and I was like, oh, maybe it's a boat in distress. And I got the binoculars out as we got closer and closer, and we were about 7-8 miles out, looked through the binoculars, and it's an active volcano erupting. Because Home Reef went from being an active volcanic reef to actually blowing through the surface of the ocean. Oh, there was just a volcano in the middle of the sea.
What?
Yeah, and I like woke everyone up on the boat. I was like, there's a volcano, like, you gotta come see. But like, yeah, that was one of those moments where I was like, what am I up to? Like, I'm hundreds of miles from the nearest actual landmass, and I'm just looking at a volcano birthing a new island. Having no idea how to sail on a tiny boat with two people I'd never met before, like 5 weeks earlier. I'm being like, yeah,
that is the
buzzy.
most incredible thing I've ever heard.
It was
to see an island be born.
Yeah, and the skipper I was with had really like pissed on my bonfire pissed on my volcano, because he was like, because he's been sailing for like 600 years or however old he was. So I shouldn't say that. But yeah, he was like, oh yeah, like, I've seen a couple of volcanoes at sea, and I was like, well, I haven't. Oh my god. And I didn't realize like the significance of being a new volcano, because he was like, oh, it could be this one that's really like talking about something that's 50 miles away, and I was like, my eyes are not that good, like, this is closer. and I knew Home Reef was 7 miles away from us, and I got internet on like the Starlink the next day, and I had messages from a couple of my friends and from my mum being like, did you see this? Like, there was like news articles about it, and people had sent it to me and been like, wow, did you see this when you were in Tonga? And I like opened it and I was like, yes, I did actually last night. Yeah, I saw that. It was crazy. Oh yeah, it was nuts. And like,
That is amazing.
yeah, thank God I said yes to a random dude who asked me to help him sail this boat across the Pacific. And yeah. And thank God that he didn't mind that I didn't really know how to sail. So. Awesome.
Yeah, well, you're taking risks.
Yeah,
you know?
he took a risk. I took a risk. It all worked out in the end.
Took a chance on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice. That's so cool. And so, I'm not familiar as much with the Pacific. Can you tell me where exactly this was?
So I flew, which it was all paid for, which was dope. So I didn't get paid for the job, but my flights and everything, food, booze, all the rest of it's covered. They flew me out from New Zealand to Tahiti in French Polynesia, which is actually a lot deeper, like further east in the Pacific than I had realised. So it's about a 5-hour flight from New Zealand to Tahiti, and then there's a 12-day sail, a 10 to 12-day sail from Tahiti in French Polynesia to Tonga, which is almost directly above New Zealand.
Okay.
And that's about 950 nautical miles, maybe? No, more than that. 1,400 nautical miles. And then we were in Tonga for like 2 weeks, and then we sailed out of Tonga, went right past Niue, and then right round the bottom of New Caledonia, which, again, speaking of political circumstances, we were going to stop in New Caledonia, but there's a whole massive political uprising in New Caledonia at the moment, so we made the executive decision not to do that. And then sailed into Australia, that was closer to 1,800 nautical miles, and it took 14 days in the end, and so that was 14 days at sea, and that's fully at sea with no land in sight, and yeah, just...
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you, how did you find this? Why did he...
I loved it. It's actually my mum works with a doctor, and the doctor's husband is a delivery skipper. That's like what he does. That's his job. And this was his last delivery ever, and he needed some crew, and my mum just sort of randomly was like, like Kate would probably do it, like having not spoken to me about it at all. I was like, Kate would probably do it, just while I'm like fully employed working in an architecture firm as a designer. But then she called me and she was like, oh yeah, I said that you'd probably want to do that, and I was like, I hate it when you're right, but like, yeah, I would. And so I met him once, and we chatted and we got on like all right, and then I was like, yo, I don't really know how to sail. I used to sail like little like plastic boats as a sea scout, but like I can't, I'm not an ocean crossing sailor. And he was like, yeah, I don't care, like that's fine.
Wow.
And
he
then,
just needed somebody.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing.
And actually, like, yeah, I loved it, and I feel like he was pretty happy with me. Like, I adapted to it quite fast, and there was moments that were like really scary, and moments that I was like, get me off this boat, I want my mummy and I want her now.
But she volunteered you for this.
But you get over that because you were also like 1,000 miles away from anything, and you're like, well, my mummy can't get me, so I really do just need to like get over it. But it was sick, and I think it's a really cool way to see the world. I think like I saw, it sounds really cringe, but like I saw families and stuff, and like met families in Tonga who like were living on the boats, and like, they got up in the morning and made breakfast, and then the kids did like a couple hours worth of homeschool, and then they made lunch, and then the kids went out and went like kite foiling for the afternoon, and then came back and did a couple more hours worth of homework or homeschooling or whatever, and then they all got in their little rib and went out and did like dusk diving in the evening as a family in their matching wetsuits, and they came back and made dinner. And then they played cards and then went to bed, and I was like, I've never been one to really like want the like family unit thing, but I was like watching these people and I was like, I want this. This looks like, what a cool way to live. And these meeting all these people who are just like have spent years like sailing around and stuff, and a really cool. It's that like concept of like slow travel, kind of like you were talking about before. Like this is like where we are now is slow travel. Like that was slow travel. Like what could have been I think Tahiti to Australia is probably like a 7-hour flight maybe. Took us 7.5 weeks
Oh my
to
God.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because not just the actual sailing passage was only about 3 weeks, but, you know, we had breakdowns, we had to do work on the boat before we left, we had crew swap on and off in Tonga, we had to hang out in Tonga and wait for customs. Like, once you do all of that shit in the mix, it's like, yeah, you turn a 7-hour flight into a 7.5 week journey.
Yeah.
But so worth it, and I would love to do it again if the opportunity should ever arise.
Just in case your mom calls
Just
you
in
up.
case, yeah, just in case mum's like, yo, I've got another job for you, that would be sick.
A friend of a friend needs someone on a boat.
They don't even have to be a friend, an acquaintance will do. I'm not like an ex-traveler, like I'm not an extreme traveler by any means, but I think I get a real kick out of like surprising myself by doing things that I didn't think I would do. I think that's always my best moments. So like I accidentally ended up driving the entire length of Costa Rica, like with my sister. Like we rented a car because we couldn't get a bus, and they were like in this shitbox car driving on the wrong side of, for me, the wrong side of the road. Yeah, on the wrong side of the car, with like 7 lanes of traffic that then turn into 1 lane of traffic that then goes over the bollard and goes on the inside lane of the traffic coming in the other direction, and just doing stuff like just stupid shit like that where you're like, what the hell? And like catching the little, like, we got really into riding around on like the local like transit collectivos in Mexico because they were like the cheapest thing ever, and it's just a transit van with the door ripped off, and they just sort of like chuck you out at a random point on the side of the highway, and they're like, oh, this is where you want to go, and we're like, where the fuck am I? And yeah, like just doing, it's those little silly things, and yeah, getting stuck on the wrong side of the highway on a bike that we'd borrowed from the hostel, and we were trying to find a national park and ended up cycling down a 4-lane highway, and like it's those little moments where I'm like, how did I get here? But I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Like I don't know how I got here, but I love that I am, and it's silly, and I like to be surprised by like I think the most rewarding thing for me is like doing something I wasn't sure would be good or that I could do, and enjoying it, like the sailing, like coming here, like going to Central America last year. Like I think that's the best bit, is just like, you know, being like, oh man, like, yeah, I did that. And like, even back to those trips when I was like a kid, and all of my teachers at high school being like, I can't believe your parents letting you do that, like, so dangerous, like, da-da-da, all the rest of it. And then being back and being like, yeah, but like, I did though. Like, I did, and it was fine, and like, I'm better for it. And I definitely think I'm like a better person having done stuff. Like, I really strive to not become one of those people who's like, well, on my travels I really found myself. Like, I don't want to be that person by any means, but I do think it's like very beneficial. I think it's sort of just a side consequence. You found yourself, but you weren't trying to. I didn't mean to, yeah. But yeah, I think hands down, actually, in answer to your question, the best thing about all of it is the people. Like 100%, 100,000%. Like, I would probably give up most actual experiences to keep having, like, if I had to split it into like the experience versus the people that I met, I would keep the people that I met over the countries. Like, I think that's the best bit, is like you just have met so many like dope people. Like, Turkey was really good for that, like Mexico was amazing for that, like here's been amazing for that. The sailing thing was fucking awful for that. Didn't meet anybody because, you know, you're alone on a boat. But yeah, the people are definitely like so much the best part, and that fills me with so much warmth when I like think about it, and I'm like, man, like all these new friends. And what we've talked about this before too. Like, you meet all these people, and it is almost easier too when you're alone. So much easier. So much easier to meet people when you're by yourself. It's actually insane. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is specifically. If it's that people see you as a pair or in a group and assume that, like, yo, they're all good because they've got these people with them, or like, you know, they wouldn't want to talk to me anyway. But there was a couple of times with my sister where we found in hostels that we found it really hard to meet people, and I've when I was with other girls in Europe, both times it was harder to meet people. We still met people, but not as much. And then, yeah, since I've been on my own this time, it's just bizarrely so much easier. And I wonder a little bit if part of that is that you can, like, completely, like, put on some fake ass persona to start with. Like, there's no one to call you on your bullshit. Like, if you're with someone from home, they can be like, why are you being so zazzy? Like, settle down. Like, you're not like this. Like, you know, you're like, you sucker, huh? Like, what are you doing? Like, you sit in your bed and you, like, talk to your cat. Like, what are you doing? But if you, like, have nobody with you, you can walk in and be like, oh my god, like, I am the life of the party, and you don't know that that's a lie. And you can do that sort of thing, and, like, like, if there's no consequence to making a bit of a twat of yourself, you're way more willing to try it, and then usually it goes fine, and you actually just end up, you know, making way more friends.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And yeah, because you're unapologetically yourself, because no one can hold you to any kind of standard.
No.
They don't know who you are back home. Your baggage is kind of momentarily off.
Yeah, it's completely gone, and there's no one, there's very little consequence in the meeting of people by yourself in such short spurts. And I've been the downside of that. Like, that's amazing and it's awesome, because you're like, man, I was a fool. Like, this is really weird. I made a fool of myself, and I'm never going to see you again. That's fine. And that's really nice sometimes. Mm-hmm. But then on the flip side of that,
you're never going to see them again.
It's sad. Like, we've had a couple of people leave, and, like, you know, you're leaving, like, literally tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, it's sad. I've said goodbye to more people in the last few months than I have probably in the last few years, and it's sad. Like, and it's part of it, and it's, like, nice, because you know that the person that you're saying goodbye to is going off to do what they want to be doing, and you're having to say goodbye because you're going to do what you want to do. But it doesn't make it any less sad. You're like, oh, where want you to go?
Yeah, and well, what happens too is, especially in a place like this, we're all experiencing a lot of the same things, and so when things go wrong, we're all there for it, and when things go right, we're all here for it.
Yeah.
And that brings you closer, and we're in such close quarters, and, you know,
we're living the same routine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
it's like Love Island without the love. It's just you're accelerating friendship.
You really are, massively. Yeah. And, like, that's really awesome, and I love it. But it does come with the massive, like, kick up the ass of, like, everyone has to go.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but yeah, it's I'm really excited for, I think my money situation is going to put an end to my hip-hop skipping around probably by, like, Easter next year, but I'm really, really excited for
everything in between.
Yeah, everything in between that, and I think, like, I just have had the best start to this whole thing, because I always said to people when I was leaving New Zealand, people were like, oh, how long do you think you're going to go for and stuff, and I've watched other friends and, like, acquaintances really fuck themselves up by leaving New Zealand and saying to everybody, like, right, I'm not coming back for 5 years, and then they leave and something goes horribly wrong, or they can't get a job, or their money runs out or something, and they come back in 6 months or a year or 18 months, and then they get this horrible failure complex, which is, like, that was, like, the last thing that I wanted. So when I left New Zealand, I was like, right, I know I've got pretty much 2 months on this boat. People are like, oh, when are you going to come back to New Zealand? I was like, could be in 2 months from now. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, well, it could be 2 months. It could be 2 years. It could be 5 years. It could be 18 months. It could be 9 months. And they were like, well, you've got really no idea. And I think I'm really glad that I did that, because, yes, this experience has been really good so far, but there's nothing to say that in 6 months' time it won't be, and I want to go home.
Yeah.
And if I do, then I just will.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I've had the start that I've had, because it fills me with confidence to do the next bit and, you know, keep taking the momentum forward, because I love it at the minute and I want to push it as long as I can.
It's as scary as it is, because I'm someone who finds the unknown very scary.
Yeah, I think most people do.
Yeah. There's so much beauty in it in this case, where you're safe, you're healthy. So why not sort of throw yourself into something and just see where it goes?
Yeah, and it's better than being sad doing something you feel like you know and like you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the sunk cost fallacy. right? Like the fact that you promised you were going to do something, or you set out to do something, and you've invested so much into it, you have to see it through. And actually, a lot of times you don't.
Yeah.
Like, unless lives are on the line,
Yeah.
you don't,
Probably
actually.
don't. And especially at like this point in like, you know, my life, certainly I can't speak for you. I don't think you have any children, but or a husband, but like, you know, I don't have a partner. I don't have kids. I don't have property. I have no dependents like on me. Like, this is exactly the kind of time like that. I mean, fingers crossed I'm not gonna be alone forever, but like, you know, I hope one day that's not the case. But right now that is the case, and this is the perfect time to like do all of the, because there's gonna be a time where I'll be like, oh my god, I really want to go and work at sales on cost again. Then you know, what if I have like 3 shitty little kids and like, you know,
Hey, they've got kids here. Bring them.
Yeah, bring them. This is true. This is true.
Sales on Coast was a bad example, because you could just bring them.
They might not always. Yeah, exactly. But they, you know, it's that thing of like, there might be.
Yeah.
There might be a time where you can't. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the karaoke.
The karaoke's kicking off. It's still shit.
We've been having this you know, very, you know, vibrant conversation, sort of soundtrack to I wanna dance with somebody for the last, you know, 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, that's
So we weren't lying. If you can hear it, the karaoke has started, and
it's real.
It's as if it comes from all directions.
It really is surround sound.
Because when we're down at the back, it sounds like it's right next to us. But right now, it sounds like it's
over there.
Over there. So it's crazy.
It's a mystery.
All right. So wrapping up. Do you want to give that context? You have the right to say no. If you want to remind us what your one-liner was.
I'm not going to give any context,
Okay.
other than, I left behind my shorts, my underwear, and my socks, and I didn't replace them.
Oh, okay.
And so it was,
Okay, and just remind me where you were.
This was the Guatemalan land border between Belize and Guatemala. So when I left Belize, this is fun because there's that no man's land middle bit.
Okay.
When I left Belize, I had underwear on. When I got to Guatemala, I didn't.
You didn't have shorts or socks either.
No.
Okay.
Fun trick.
All right.
Yeah.
Trick. Okay.
Fun
Interesting.
Trick.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there then.
Okay. Amazing.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kate. This was such a good conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been really nice.
Good luck with everything. I have big hopes for you to see everything through for the next
I hope so. Maybe I'll come to Bordeaux and drink some wine.
Yes, please do. You're more than welcome.
That would be amazing. Thanks for letting me yap.
Of course.